Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. We're also adding a new segment to the show, ladies and gentlemen, where we listen to an audio clip of importance each and every single week, right before we get into the fan Q&A, where we answer fans' questions. We do this each and every single Monday. The show comes out on Monday, so if you like that, hopefully you'll stick around. Woo! We got a lot of questions, or not questions, we have a lot of news stories to go through today on today's episode, like a lot. And I hope we can get to questions today, and I'm pretty sure we will, because there's just so many. So very many news stories. So, this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins sign wide receiver Allen Hurns. The Dolphins have signed wide receiver Allen Hurns, according to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. When finalized, it will be a one-year, $3 million deal for the veteran. The Cowboys released Hurns earlier this week when he declined to accept a pay cut. The Cowboys were reportedly interested in bringing him back on a cheaper deal, but he'll be taking his talents to South Beach instead. With the Dolphins, Hurns profiles as a strong depth option behind the likes of Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson, Devontae Parker, and Jakeem Grant. Meanwhile, his arrival may put Bryce Butler, another former Cowboy, on the bubble. When Hurns was younger and healthy, he was among the most promising receivers in the NFL. The former undrafted free agent began his career with 51 catches for 677 yards and 6 scores for the Jaguars in 2014. In 2015, he set career highs with 64 grabs, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. In that campaign, he averaged an impressive 16.1 yards per reception. Since then, Hurns has been sidetracked by injuries. He hasn't topped 40 catches for 500 yards in the last 3 campaigns and was used sparingly in Dallas last season. While there is a decent amount of receiver talent in Miami, there is an opportunity for Hurns to break through and shine with a rebuilding club. With a strong year, the 27-year-old, 28 November, could put himself back in the hunt for big money deals. So, it's honest, before we get so you understand the real situation for Allen Hurns, it's going to be very hard for the Dolphins to come down on a final roster decision on all of these receivers, because they're all so very talented in their own way. This is the most competitive receiver group in probably, I can't even, it's the most, I'll say this, it's the most competitive receiver group out of the Philbin era, out of the Gase era, by far, in my opinion. There are so many talented players on this receiver depth chart. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. Chad O'Shea, the offensive coordinator, former receivers coach, and our receivers coach, talked about how deep the group was today in press conferences and how hard it's going to be and how excited they are for this group to get on the field. But they also talked about how hard it's going to be to finalize who's going to play where, who's making the roster, all that kind of stuff. So the receiver group is super deep and super talented. Doesn't matter how the national media really paints it. It's a very deep group and very talented. So adding him to the mix is ridiculous in my opinion, in a good way, not a bad way. I feel like he's a better version. He's a great possession receiver. He's not going to really, scare you with his speed, but he's just a good receiver. He's a very good 2. I don't necessarily think he'll ever be a very good 1. But in his prime, the best ball he played, he was a very good 2 to Allen Robinson's 1. And he went over 1,000 yards one season. He's a good 50-50 guy. Again, he's not going to take the top off of a defense. But if he is in that kind of a situation where you throw a ball up, he's done very well in coming down with the ball. He's the guy who can move the chains on the outside. He's a good outside receiver. He reminds me a little bit of Mohamed Sanu in the way he plays the game. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a grasp on what he does. He's a better run after the catch receiver than Mohamed Sanu. He's had some good highlight plays, run after the catch throughout his career. He's a good route runner. He's got great hands. He's just really a prototypical, really good possession outside receiver. is the best way I can describe him. And he could help our third down numbers. He's, he can move the chains, so I think this is a great addition to the team. We don't need him to go over 1,000 yards. We just need him to be Allen Hurns, which is a good thing. I'm not expecting anything out of him. To me, he's a better version of Bryce Butler. Bryce might be a better 50-50 guy, but I think Allen does everything else as a receiver better. So that's the kind of player we're getting. And again, I think he can help our third down numbers. I think he can help us smooth the chains on a consistent basis. He's very, very I think he's a good route runner. So that's really the best way I can describe Allen Hurns. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast knows who he is. If you watch, he's played at the University of Miami. He played in Jacksonville. So, I'm sure people are familiar with him. It's a really good signing, though. It just makes it harder because, you think about some of the guys that are trying to make the roster. Adding a big receiver like him, and you got Preston Williams, you got Devontae Parker. Different play styles, different physical attributes, different ways that they can take, have a very good football game. They're different, but they have the same kind of body type, around the same. It's just going to be really interesting how the Dolphins come down to a decision with this receiver group. Because you would hate to see Preston Williams be let go. He might be young and raw, but he is a super talented player who, if developed right, can be a clear-cut number one in this league, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see how, hopefully we don't lose someone great. I really hope that doesn't happen, but, hopefully we make the right decisions. This next news story, Dolphins wide receiver Albert Wilson returns to practice. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins wideout Albert Wilson was in pads Sunday and appeared to be practicing. As Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald tweets, that is certainly welcome news for the Fins, as it was reported last month that Wilson may not be ready to go until the start of the season. Wilson signed a 3-year, $24 million contract last March, and his first season in South Beach got off to a good start. He caught 26 passes for 391 yards and 4 touchdowns in 7 games. He pulled in 2 touchdown grabs of at least 70 yards. He threw a 52-yard touchdown pass, and he was averaging 11.2 yards per target. Unfortunately, Wilson suffered a serious hip injury in October, which cut his season short. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, recently indicated that Wilson would be back on the field by week 1 at the latest. But it appears that his timeline has been accelerated a bit. And while the Dolphins are not going to be challenging for a playoff spot this year, here you go. You didn't have to put it in there, but you did anyway. That's fantastic. Wilson is still young. He just turned 27 to perhaps be part of the next competitive Miami team. It would be good for the club to see what he has in him and to get him some reps with the second-year quarterback, Josh Rosen, in camp. Dude, the national perception and what is actually going on in camp is so different. It's very, very different. And I even think the way the coaches think about this team is completely different, at least in some positional groups. Some it's the same level. But this, I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent here, but this is great news that we're getting Albert back faster than we thought. So, we all know what he can do after the catch. He's a great receiver. I think he could have had better numbers too last year, but if it wasn't for some poor quarterback play. Tannehill missed him quite like 3 or 4 times, really. That would have been big plays. So hopefully the quarterback plays more consistent. Hopefully the offensive line is more consistent. And Albert Wilson should have a great season because he is a great player. And he can get yards in so many different ways. You can put him in the backfield, hand the ball off to him. You can throw him a 1-yard pass. He can take it 80 yards to the house. He can go deep on you. And he's a good intermediate route runner. So he can do a lot of different things. And it's really good news that he's coming back so fast. Or at least faster than we thought. To kind of give you a perspective on how, where he is in his recovery, Chad O'Shea said today in a press conference that he's where Jakeem was coming back from his injury in OTAs, which is good. And that kind of sounds bad, but it's not. So he should be full go by week 1, is basically what that means. He should be 100% healthy. Now, I don't know if he'll play any preseason games or anything like that. I doubt it, but we'll see what happens. Alright, now we're going to be breaking down. So some of these news stories might be old, but we're going to be breaking down, well, not news stories, but we're going to be breaking down training camp practices one by one. I think the only one we're missing is day 3 because they didn't do it for day 3 for some reason. Maybe not. Maybe we have day 3. So this is day 1 through 4 so far, and this is a breakdown of basically all of the things that you need to know about those practices. And I think... Okay, so this is the first day of training camp, and this comes from the Palm Beach Post. We might have 2 from day 1, okay? So this first one comes from the Palm Beach Post, and this is the first day of training camp. Miami Dolphins Ryan Fitzpatrick outshines Josh Rosen in training camp debut of the quarterback competition. The first training camp practice of Rosen's Miami Dolphins career did not go as he might have hoped. This is what Rosen had to say about it. He said, quote, "I thought I had a slow start but finished pretty strong. I think it's about getting used to everything, teammates, offense, situations, and all of that. I think it's as long as tomorrow is better than today. As long as tomorrow is better than today, I think we'll be good." Rosen and running back Mark Walton later fumbled a handoff, and the two scuttled to a Dolphins take no talent, as a disciplinary measure. So what that means, because I didn't really explain it that well, anytime the offense or defense messes up, they have to run to this wall that says TNT on it, which says takes no talent. Anytime the offense or defense messes up, they have to do that. So this is another quote from Josh Rosen about the first day of training camp. He said, quote, "It's not about taking a massive step forward. It's just about continuing to grow and continuing to make positive progress. I think that kind of setback is worse than any progress you can gain. I'm just trying to stay consistent." Well, there certainly was no massive step forward Thursday. Rosen did complete a nice touchdown pass to Nick O'Leary, but there are 9 training camp practices to go, each an opportunity to prove Rosen deserves the starting job. Here's the rub. Rosen, 22, has been inconsistent since his arrival, and 36-year-old journeyman Ryan Fitzpatrick has been inaccurate, confident, and poised. So while Coach Brian Flores is in no mood to christen a leader in the quarterback competition, Rosen will have to show more to stay in it. Rosen was clearly playing second fiddle to the veteran. And again, that's the first day of training camp. So just a quick, because we got more. Well, I think we could probably take a little bit longer, but I want to be a little bit quick with this. So just what I think about that news is, it is really just more of the same. Throughout OTAs, Ryan Fitzpatrick, from all reports and accounts, clearly was the better quarterback through spring training. Now that we're getting to training camp, which is the most important, granted, this first practice had nothing to do with pads, I'm pretty sure. So they didn't have pads on. So this was, again, a t-shirt short situation. Ryan Fitzpatrick beat him. And we have more news stories to get down. Okay, so this is another report from day 1 of training camp. I forgot about this before we move on to day 2. This comes from Dolphins Wire. This was your starting offensive line day 1 of training camp. Left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. Your starting left tackle was Laramie Tunsil. Your starting left guard was Chris Reed. Your starting center was Daniel Kilgore. Your starting right guard was Jesse Davis. Your starting right tackle is Jordan Mills. So the one that really surprised me the most was left guard Chris Reed. Our offensive line coach kind of elaborated on that a little bit and explained it. He said that the reason Chris Reed was starting over Michael Dieter is Chris is just more far along into what it takes to be a pro, is what he said. So he's just saying he has more experience, and I guess you trust him more to play there. Is the reason he's taking first team reps. So again, your starting offensive lineup, or not lineup, but your starting offensive line for the first day of training camp or training camp so far, left tackle Laramie Tunsil, your left guard was Chris Reed, your center was Daniel Kilgore, your right guard was Jesse Davis, and your right tackle was Jordan Mills. The only thing I would really change on this lineup, at least of how I look at it, is I would put Jesse at right tackle and then move Jordan Mills into right guard, if I had a say in the whole situation. Alright, so moving on to day 2. These are 13 observations from training camp at day 2. This comes from MiamiDolphins.com. Here are my 13 observations from the second practice of training camp. Safety TJ McDonald practiced after being activated off the physically unable to perform list. New wide receiver Allen Hurns took part in individual drills before riding the stationary bike during team drills. Rookie wide receiver Preston Williams made a nice adjustment on a back shoulder throw by Ryan Fitzpatrick in a cornerback/wide receiver one-on-one drill. Wide receiver Devontae Parker made a nice contested catch on a deep pass from Ryan Fitzpatrick on the second play of 11-on-11 drills. Fitzpatrick threw a long touchdown pass to wide receiver Bryce Butler on the very next play. Rookie defensive end Dwayne Hendricks got to the quarterback in a team drill. Cornerback Eric Rowe had a nice breakup in the end zone against Preston Williams. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Mike Gesicki, the top 2 Dolphins picks from the 2018 draft, had a tough battle for a deep pass in the end zone. The pass fell incomplete. Jakeem Grant, Kenyon Drake, and rookie Trenton Irwin all fielded punts during a special teams period. Jerome Baker got to Fitzpatrick in team drills for a sack. Eric Rowe had another breakup at the end zone against Preston Williams. Rashad Jones followed that with another breakup in the end zone on the next play, that one against tight end Clive Walford. Quarterback Jake Rudock threw a nice touchdown pass to Kenny Stills in the corner of the end zone. So those are your observations from the second day of training camp. Those are some of the highlight plays that happened. This next news story is the day 3 of training camp. Miami Dolphins camp, day 3 sees a lot of fullback. This comes from Fin Fanatic. The Miami Dolphins will be using a fullback this year, which is of little surprise given the fact that half of their coaching staff have ties to New England, where fullback is used often. When the Dolphins drafted in April, they made Chandler Cox one of those selections. Today, the Dolphins have pads on. Those in attendance are pointing out that Cox is seeing work from the position. This year's Dolphins backfield is going to look far different than it did under Adam Gase, and that is going to be a good thing. It's been reported on social media today that another player, this is day 3 of training camp, also lined up at the fullback position in goal line drills. Defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, Miami's first-round pick last April, lined up at the spot behind the quarterback. So then he says, could this simply be a fun exercise for the fans, or will the Dolphins consider using him in real games? So if you don't know, Christian Wilkins actually played fullback at Clemson last year. His last year at Clemson, he had a few snaps there. So yeah, this is something that he's done throughout his career. I said this before when we drafted him. I said we're going to be using him at fullback. You're going to see him all over the field, especially on defense. You're going to see him on the edge, inside, standing up. You're going to see him do a lot of different things. You're going to see him stand over the center guards. I mean, he's going to do so much different stuff because he's so versatile and he's such a great athlete. So this report doesn't surprise me, but all reports coming from training camp have stated that we're running the ball a lot and trying to get this team to be more physical. So this next news story is a rundown of training camp day 3. And this comes from the Palm Beach Post. The Dolphins had their 3rd training camp of the summer on Saturday. Only linebacker Mike Cole and cornerback Cordrea Tankersley were slated to sit out. This was the first Dolphins practice in which players wore pads. Okay, so these are some observations. Brian Flores began practice by teaching a contract drill between linebackers, safeties, and tight ends. Flores was working with former CFL linebacker Sam, I don't know how to say his last name, Eggoven, I think is how you say his last name. We'll just call him Sam, who again opened with the starters, who's actually been having a really good training camp so far. Again, we signed him from the CFL. He's had a very good training camp so far. The Dolphins clearly see something in Sam worth investing in. Albert Wilson hip returned to practice in a limited basis. Mark Walton is slippery and fast and could be a really intriguing option as the 3rd running back, especially as a receiving threat. Jakeem Grant made Nick Needham look silly with a quick break in a passing drill. Grant clearly is feeling healthier. Kalen Ballage is still taking some of the first-team carries. Fair to think Flores is attempting to encourage Ballage and push Kenyon Drake. They should both get plenty of carries this season. Maybe it's a shared carry situation. Bobby McCain and Xavier Howard had passing drill interceptions. Again, Bobby McCain and Xavier Howard had picks and passing drills. Josh Rosen had a strong close to practice with several well-placed touchdown passes during 11-on-11 drills. Ryan Fitzpatrick and his center ran to the TNT wall after a botched snap. Now, day 3 of training camp, Josh Rosen won, according to Twitter, and like everybody who was there was like, yeah, this is the first day Josh actually played better than Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you could see in the breakdown of that day in practice, like, he had the well-placed touchdown passes, and Ryan Fitzpatrick had the botched snap. And that was the first day of pads, which I think is very interesting. So the first day the Dolphins put on pads, Josh plays better. So that's interesting to me. Let's see here. What do I want to take you guys next here? Okay, let's go to day 4, Sunday, which is the day I'm recording this, and that training camp rundown. This comes from the Palm Beach Post as well. Miami Dolphins practice report, day 4, Sunday. This again comes from the Palm Beach Post. The Dolphins are back on the field practicing this morning after a workout on Saturday that was their first in pads this season, but they're getting no break from Coach Brian Flores, who is preaching toughness. They're back in full pads today, and things did not start well. At least players also can look forward to having the day off Monday observations. Rosen just hit Kenny Stills with a nice deep throw. Fitzpatrick followed with an overthrow to Jakeem Grant. Rosen followed with a beautiful deep completion to Isaiah Ford over Montre Heritage, best play of the early going. Sorry guys, my hair got in the way of me reading this. After practice, reporters will get their first chance to interview offensive assistant coaches, including coordinator Chad O'Shea and running back coach Eric Studsville. So we get more clarity on competition between, that's not important. Linebacker Chase Allen is not practicing. Again, this is day 4 of training camp, Sunday. 3 players remain on physically unable to perform: quarterback Cordarius Tankersley, Mike Hull, and tight end Dwayne Hallen. Okay, so this is a little jumbled, excuse me. About 2 plays later, Fitzpatrick mishandled a snap, but managed to avoid punishment after of running to the wall. Dolphins ran a physical drill in which runners started at the 5, defenders on goal line, and it's man versus man. Most notable play, wide receiver Preston Williams moved down linebacker Tyrone Holmes. Linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel had a nice play. Linebacker Kiko Alonso did not have his best moment. Tight end Nick O'Leary powered his way in. So that's interesting to me because Kiko he's been like hit or miss in the running game. So to hear that doesn't surprise me that he wasn't doing very well on those red zone drills. That's interesting to me. In goal line, Josh Rosen hit Kalen Ballage for a nice touchdown with a diving grab. In a blocking drill, left tackle Laramie Tunsil handled Charles Harris. So he put Charles Harris on the ground in a blocking drill. Fitzpatrick found Devontae Parker for a score in the red zone. Entire defense had to run to the wall after a substitution was fouled up. Rough day, so they had a penalty on a substitution. They had to run to the wall. Jake Rudock with a terrific throw, and wide receiver Saheed Blacknall with an outstanding catch in the red zone. So Jake Rudock threw a good touchdown to Saheed. Linebacker Raekwon McMillan stopped Ballage with a solid goal line hit. Not to be outdone, and the entire offense was ordered to run to the wall. Wall is not lonely this morning. So there was a lot of mental errors in day 4 of practice, which is fine. I mean, this is like the second day of pads. So that doesn't really, this is what practice is for, is to mess up and correct those mistakes. So that doesn't make me super upset. That one seemed to be a draw between Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick. At least the consensus is that that's what kind of took place. So what do I think about the first 4 days of training camp? That was a lot of reading, and I am not the best at reading in terms of, I think that's one of my weaker podcasting skills. So hopefully you guys are still here, 24 minutes in. But that was a lot of getting through that. It's almost 30 minutes of reading. So my impressions of the first 4 days of training camp, I'm disappointed in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Although I think Josh Rosen will eventually win the job. I was happy that Ryan Fitzpatrick was doing so well throughout spring training. And his first day of training camp, he did what he was doing. You know, he's throwing touchdowns. He looked good. He looked poised. He was good against the blitz. He was good against pressure. He was throwing beautiful deep balls. Ever since they put pads on, he's kind of come back to earth and been Ryan Fitzpatrick, which that's disappointing. Because if you look at his Pro Football Focus Room numbers last year, they were really good. He was one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz last year. He was actually top 3 against the blitz. He was top 3. I think he was number 1. He was the best quarterback in the league last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Passing against man defenses, which is really hard to do in the NFL. And so I was really excited about. He's also one of the best deep ball throwers last year. I was really excited about his development with a talented receiver core. And how well he was doing in practices, especially in red zone drills and stuff of that nature. So to kind of hear that he's come back to earth a little disappointing. That's probably my biggest observation. My second biggest observation is how physical practices are and how mistakes are not just like, oh, that was a mistake. And how an emphasis on conditioning is bigger than ever. You know, you hear media members, coaches talk and really saying like they haven't seen this team being conditioned and ran this way since Don Shula. Some of the old players, when they were observing practices, those were some of their big takeaways. My third biggest takeaway would probably be how good Bobby McCain has been playing at free safety. You know, in goal line drills today, even though they didn't highlight it, I caught this on Twitter. He had a couple of good red zone stops on the goal line, you know, playing a little bit off ball deep there, which is pretty good. You know, he's had a few interceptions. He's covered well. Everything in terms of, you know, this is his first time playing free safety, has been good. So that's another big observation. Probably my fourth biggest observation is Brian Flores and how much people love him. You know, how much everybody's really embracing him. You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick came out and gave him a glowing review, and he's been a part of a lot of NFL locker rooms. He didn't have to say this, by the way. He said he was really impressive how quickly he's won over the team when he was talking about Brian Flores. I think it's because of his emphasis on competition. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a first-round pick, you just got a contract, or you're an undrafted rookie. You're all treated the same. You all have the same opportunity to win the job, and I think that's why the players respect him so much and love him so much. You know, there was accounts of him, or not accounts, he did this. I love this, like I sound like I'm being a lawyer or something like that. But how he would give pep talks to the offensive and defensive units before they would do red zone drills, stuff like that, like little stuff like that. Those are some of the big observations I made over the first 4 days of training camp. I'm also a little disappointed in the offense as a whole because they had such a good spring, like one of the best springs that I have read about in many years as a Dolphins fan. So for the offense to kind of hit a brick wall, and again, it's only the first 4 days, is a little disappointing because they were red hot, and now they've kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Hopefully that comes back up a little bit because I hope that doesn't, because this is a very prototypical Dolphins training camp where the offense struggles and the defense wins like almost every single practice, and that's happened with Jay Cutler, Ryan Tannehill over the last almost 10 years now. So I was really hoping that would change. And it sounded like it did. You know, the first day of training camp, it was heating up with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He still was the man. We put pads on, things kind of crashed down. And that's usually how things work, though, in the NFL, in case you're not familiar with that. Defenses are usually it's a lot easier to tear things down than build things up. That's the great Steve Sable quote when he was describing how you would build a team and stuff like that. It's true. It is a lot harder. You can get defense quicker than you can in offense because defense too, but offense on probably a little bit bigger scale. So that's normal in the NFL for the defenses to be a little bit ahead of the offenses this early in training camp. But hopefully that comes back. Hopefully we see that in preseason. Hopefully we see explosion, consistency with the offense. That's the thing that I'm looking for the most this training camp, is how consistent is the offense, because that has been the biggest fault of this team, especially in off seasons, that the offense has done poorly over the last few years in off-season practices. So I hope that improves, and it was way better than it had been, you know, throughout spring. I mean, way better. And in the first 2 days of training camp, it was good. Now it's kind of come back to earth a little bit. So hopefully that gets better. So those are some of my takeaways from training camp so far. In my breakdown, and one thing before we move on to the clip of the week, one thing I would like to say about the Josh Rosen Ryan Fitzpatrick, if anyone is sitting here saying to you that one is winning or one is like in the lead, they're wrong. No one's in the lead right now. I mean, no one is in the lead right now. It could be anybody's game. Anybody's game. This just started, ladies and gentlemen. No one has a lead. No one is ahead. I think it's really even right now. There's so much more left to go. So, you know, and especially since Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of cooled off a little bit, it definitely, I think, is more even than ever since Josh has been here. And Josh, you know, he had a good practice day 4, had a good practice day 3. Hopefully he can keep that up. He can keep that up, hopefully. And you know, there have been reports of the offensive line being okay, not good, you know, very meh, which is kind of as to be expected, because this is, you know, their first time playing together. So that could, you usually hear that with offensive line. So that's another observation I made. Hopefully that improves over the next few weeks. A few weeks. All right, so this clip is Jakeem Grant talking about Brian Flores, and how they're going to be one of the most conditioned team in the NFL. So let's sync this up, ladies and gentlemen. And hopefully you hear this. And we're going to be doing this every week. This is a new segment where we go through a clip of the week and I give you my opinions. Just so you can get an idea of what people are talking about and what the players feel like about the new coaching staff. Alright, I messed up, guys. Alright, here we go. There we go. Alright, we're started over again. I apologize. Again, this is about them being the most conditioned team in the league.
Did he deliver to you guys on the eve of training camp opening up?
You know, he always pushing that message of being the most conditioned team in the NFL. But he also wants us to go out there and be smart and operate whenever you're tired. And what the conditioning part is, you know, you're taking blows, you're getting hit, running deep routes after deep routes, and you know, even playing down here is hot. You know, it's hot. So he has that TNT wall. The thing is, it takes no talent. And I think that's a great message to push, because if we can do things that extraordinary, that takes no talent, I mean, we'll be a great team.
The training camp's always
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is what I want to hear as a fan. Just emphasis on conditioning, obviously. And, you know, Kimbo Camper said it best a few weeks back when he was talking about, I haven't seen this team run like this since Don Shula. Conditioning is a huge advantage. You heard Kim talk about it. Talk about how September you can really take advantage of your conditioning because it's so hard to play in Miami in September. And still to this day, if you talk to NFL players around the league, they're like, yeah, it's really tough to play. Like, you just hear in interviews how, you know, some of the toughest places to play in the league. They're like, Miami in September is no joke. You know, throughout the 70s and 80s, we had this huge winning streak at home. I can't remember what it was. It was like in the 20s, I think. We had a huge winning streak. So hopefully we can bring that tradition back. And we've been a very good home team over the last few years. I think we've been like something like 9-2 over our last few home games that we've played. So we're a very good home team. We just need to be better on the road. That was a huge issue for us last year. We were really good at home, but on the road we were really bad. So, but yeah, this can bring some of that back. Bring some of that old tradition back. Which is a good thing, and I love hearing that. I love the emphasis on mental errors. He's, you know, running to the TNT wall. You know, I think it. You know, oh, it's like, is this, you know, middle school or PE or something like that where you have to run? No, I think it just makes you think about what you did. Like, it's not, oh, let's go to the next play and completely forget about it. No, you messed up, dude. And when you run to the wall, that's all you're thinking about. It's like, oh, I got to get better at this, or this is why I messed up, and stuff like that. I think it just makes you marinate and realize your mistakes and correct those mistakes. So I like it all. I like everything that I'm listening to so far. I like the coaching staff a lot. I like, you know, some of the things I'm a little bit disappointed in terms of the quarterback play and some of the offensive situations that are going on. But overall, I'm very excited to see this defense. Hopefully, the offense can consistently be great because it has the talent to do so. Obviously, the offensive line needs to be patched up, but we're going to keep our ear to the ground, ladies and gentlemen, and keep on reporting on training camp. Alright, let's get into the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A, where we answer fans' questions. Let's see how many questions we got today. 12, which is pretty good. This first question comes from Take Me Out. He says, "Hi, Skags. I really appreciate your intelligent analysis and passion for what you do here. Thanks for that. I don't know about intelligence, but I do have a great passion for this franchise and for the game of football. I really do." He goes on to say, and I really appreciate you saying that. I don't think anybody has ever once in my life said you're smart or just you're smart in general. So it means a lot, man. He says, and I'm not smart. I'm one of the dumbest, but anyway, I appreciate that. He says, "I personally believe that if the quarterback competition is very close, that it makes sense Rosen wins the job. I think if Fitz doesn't present himself as the clear-cut winner, he plays the backup role. I wanted to hear your thoughts on what you feel needs to happen that would make the case for either guy to get the starting job." I think just consistency is the biggest thing. Like, putting a lot of great practices in unison. You know, when you see Peyton Manning have a 3-touchdown day, you're like, yeah, that's what Peyton Manning does. Like, that's something that this Dolphins franchise hasn't had, like, consistency. The biggest thing that Tannehill did wrong was he wasn't consistent. He would have a good game, then he would have a bad game. You have a good game, then he would have a bad game. That's something that this franchise misses. When Dan Marino threw for 3 touchdowns, yeah, that's what Dan Marino does. We haven't had that here in a very, very long time. When you see Russell Wilson throw for 3 touchdowns or scramble for a 20-yard gain, he does that every single game. He always brings that mentality. He always brings that kind of production. That is what I am looking for from these quarterbacks. We have not seen that from Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's the biggest knock against Ryan Fitzpatrick throughout his career, is he will have a great game and then have a bad game. Josh Rosen doesn't have that around his neck. I mean, he's had some other things about leadership and personality, but that's the one thing that he hasn't had, is consistency. So I'm looking for that in him. He's a young player. He went through a rookie season. He's just getting here. Well, he's not just getting here, but he's, you know, a little bit behind Ryan Fitzpatrick in terms of knowledge of the game, how long he's been in the building, and how long he's had to study the playbook. He's a young player. He doesn't know the game as well as Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm hoping over these next few weeks that Josh, it starts clicking. It starts clicking for him. He starts getting comfortable. He starts clicking. Again, he hasn't ran with the ones that much so far. So I'm excited to see if he gets that opportunity soon and what he does with it. But the main thing I'm looking for in these reports is just consistency, man. Because whoever wins the job is not really that important to me. You know, are one of them going to give us a great quarterback season? Are one of them going to give us a good season? Obviously, Josh, it would be preferable if Josh did that, because we would have the next 15 years of him being that, and that's what we're hoping for. That's what makes Josh Rosen more exciting than Ryan Fitzpatrick, is because he is young. We don't know what his career could look like. So the thing that I'm looking back from both of them is consistency. Just be consistently good. I don't want to have these peaks and valleys, because we've had that for too long now. And that is what I'm looking for the quarterback. So if one of them can just be consistent and give us good quarterback play each and every single week, that's what I'm most worried about. And your question was, take me out. I wanted to hear your thoughts on what you feel needs to happen that would make. I just think consistency. Putting consistent practices together. And again, that's what's disappointed me about Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was having such a good offseason, and then the last few practices, he hasn't been playing that well. And that's disappointing to me, because I was like, man, he is looking really good, and it just, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. This next question comes from Lewis Traps. He says, "What's up, Skags? I always listen to your podcast on Mondays, and now Thursdays since you started the NFL podcast. Side note, I think you should make the NFL podcast longer because you're covering 32 teams versus just the Dolphins, although I'm partial to the Dolphins podcast, of course." Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that. He says, and I really appreciate that you listen to the content. It means a lot. He says he has 3 questions. He says, 1, where did you learn your knowledge for football? It seems like you've either coached or interned on the field, or you're a mad genius that can pick up formations and look at statistics. LOL. Where did I learn my Madden knowledge? I mean, I don't know. I don't look at myself like I have this great knowledge or whatever, but where did I learn the game of football is how I will frame that question. Which is, where did I learn, and I appreciate you saying that, but I am definitely not on any kind of a level of some of these, some of the other people out there in the world, obviously. But where did I learn? I don't know, man. It's just been a really big hobby of mine for a very long time, for many years. I was obsessed, still am, with NFL history videos. I love Steve Sable and some of the old content that he's made. Unfortunately, you can't really find that anymore. But I would say from there, I learned a lot. I love watching coaches. I'm a psychopath. I love watching coaching interviews, from old school interviews with old coaches, and how, I love A Football Life, where they break down on how, they prepared for the game and how they looked at the game. And it's cool because, you watch Bill Parcells and then you watch Bill Walsh, and how very different they looked at the game, completely different. Like, and the game, I think, is way more nuanced and deep than a lot of people give it credit for. I think, and I don't want to stick on this for too long because this is the Dolphins podcast, but, it's a deep game, and I really like the game, and I think it's, you have to be very smart to play the game at a high level, to really understand the game. And there's a variety of different ways you can win in the game at a high level, which is cool. So I think it was just an obsession that I've always had up for the game, and that is why I, started this podcast, was because of that obsession. So that's where I learned the game of football, just watching and for a long time, and being very obsessing over stuff like that. Just obsessing over the game and its history, and how it's played, and how to win in the game. It just fascinates me. Number 2, he says, after assessing a couple of days of training camp, you can see our offensive/defensive pressures is our weakness. I know that coaches will have to make an impact on that improvement. What are the odds we stick with the same core of linemen, or do you see us making a trade? Your thoughts? I think you're not going to see a trade. I think, if anything, the most likely thing in terms of additions you're going to see is someone getting cut of old vet. I think that's probably the extent of that. And if I had to bet, this is the lineup that I read earlier is the lineup you're going to see probably day one, if I had to bet. Hopefully no injuries happen. 3, which is his third question that Louise asked. He said, 3, after watching the press interviews, it seems like players are genuinely happy with changes made with Coach Flo and the constant push for improvement. And chemistry, like Stills inviting Rosen to his house, Rosen and Fitz sharing tips on the sideline. I'm excited for the offense this upcoming season. Give me your top 3 offensive players, with the criteria being best rookie, most improved, and best overall. Appreciate the podcast, Lewis. I appreciate you, man. That's very nice of you. Best rookie on offense? Oh, man. That's a tough question. Because we didn't. Josh was basically our second round pick. Myles Gaskin. That's a very limit. I guess Preston Williams. I'm gonna go with Preston Williams. It was between him and Michael Dieter, but I'm gonna go Preston Williams as best rookie. Most improved, Josh Rosen. Or Mike Gesicki. That's very hard, but I'm gonna go Josh Rosen because I still believe he'll start. And best overall, Laramie Tunsil. He's a great lad. He's one of the best at his position in the NFL. He's one of the best. This next question comes from, and I appreciate that, Lewis. Very nice of you to say those things. Ethan says, "Hey Skaggs." He says, he said slow, but I'm sure now he might have just meant slow, fair-minded commenter, but I think he meant show. He says, "I love the show," is what he meant to say. He says, so this question comes from Ethan. Ethan asks, he asks, "Hey Skaggs, I love the show and your fair-minded commentary. Where do you think this secondary ranks in team history? I personally think Madison, Surtain, Walker, and Marion was the best we ever had. And I think most fans go to that secondary. And the 1972 secondary was really good with, but one of the more underrated players of all time is Jake Scott, by the way. But, man, the best secondary in Dolphins history, it's probably between the 70 secondary, where we went to 3 Super Bowls, or the Surtain, Sam Madison, Walker, Marion secondary. I think it'd probably be, if I had to, right off the top of my head, it would probably be between those two. This next question comes from Burn Doe. He says, I feel like Fitz will win us 7 if he plays 13 games. Rosen, if he gets 10 games, I think he can win 4 or 5. I would agree with that if the offensive line was bad. If not, then I did completely disagree with that. This next question comes from again, we don't know where the offensive line will be, and hopefully it's much improved from last year, because it was really bad last year, underratedly bad. This next question comes from Tech Me Out. Tech Me Out asks, I feel that Wilkins brings a lot of the same attributes in regards to his personality and playing style that Warren Sapp brought to the Buccaneers in his day. They are both likable, have great leadership qualities, and a passion to win. When Sapp came and he said, the losing stops now, do you think that Wilkins can bring the same type of leadership to Miami and be the catalyst for the defense? I think he's a great leader. I don't think he's like Warren Sapp. He's a gregarious person who's, free-loving and happy. I think he shares that with Warren Sapp. But in terms of play on the field, I think they're a little they're different, because I think Christian is a lot more versatile than Warren was. Warren was one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history, especially interior linemen. One of the all-time greats. But yeah, I see what you're saying for sure. Very similar personalities, but different at the same time. Played the same positions, but I think are vastly different in terms of how they will be used throughout their career, or Christian will be used throughout his career, and how versatile Christian is compared to Warren. Because, Warren couldn't stand up on the edge like Von Miller. You know what I mean? But Christian has done it. He did that in college, and I think he's going to do that in the NFL too. And that is just, I'm painting a visual. That is not like the position Christian will play. I'm just painting a visual of how that might look. But yeah, it's a very good comparison. Take me out. This next question comes from SM. SM says, or asks, Charles Harris puts up 14, and we sustain no injuries at the O-line position. How many wins do you, oh my god, procrastinate? That's a tough question. 14 sacks. If you have a 14 sack year, your offensive line is healthy, they're playing good, that's at least a 10-win team. So definitely over 500. John Diaz says, hey man, with the addition of Allen Hurns, if he proves to be a liable second or third string or wide receiver, do you think the Dolphins may try to trade either Devontae Parker or maybe Kenny Stills? Not one of those two. Those two are too valuable. Plus, they just extended DP, and I think Kenny Stills, his leadership is greatly valued, especially with the regime now, and he's too valuable to lose. Especially hearing Chad talk about how versatile Kenny has been since he's been there. So I think there's no way that either one of those two will be traded. But I don't think that I don't think that opens the window for that. I think DP and Kenny are better than Allen Hurns. DP definitely has the potential to be better, but I think Kenny's just better. He takes the top off of a defense, and he's also a good route runner. He's a terrible run after the catch receiver, though. That's something that he has to work on. One of the funniest, dumbest, stupidest, most hair-pulling plays in Dolphins history, even though we won the game, was at home against the Patriots last year on a 3rd and very long, when Kenny made a great move on a DB and had an easy first down. It was like on a 3rd and 20, and he just fell down. And he does that a lot. And I don't mind people falling down. I don't mind receivers falling down. Keep yourself healthy. But there, there's a time and a place to fall down. That was not one of them. That was one of those you have to, it wasn't even that he was going to take a big hit. He's so used to just falling down all the dang time. So I don't even know why I brought that up, but yeah, I don't see those two getting traded, even if Allen Hurns does well. This next question comes from SM. He says, I know you're not big on the quarterback Rudock, but reports are he's doing well. If we roll 3 quarterbacks deep, what other area would you pull from to get to the 53-man roster? One less wide receiver or running back? I'm not keeping 3, dude. There's no way. I just can't do that. Jay Rudock is not good. We're not keeping 3 quarterbacks. That's not happening. So I just can't first of all, we're definitely not giving extra. We're not pulling down the receiver depth or the running back depth to keep a 3rd quarterback. No way are we doing that. I mean, if Jay Rudock, you can't pull from the offensive line. I don't know which one I would pull from. Maybe linebacker if I had to, but no, I just don't see that. That's one of those things. Is like, no, man. Just because it's so out there that I couldn't do it, if that makes any sense. It's a good question. It's a hard question to answer, but I just don't see a world where that happens. Not that you're saying that you're being serious. Obviously, it's a hypothetical, but I'm just saying. It would make no sense to even do it hypothetically, which sounds kind of a jerk way to answer that question. I don't mean to sound like that. I'm just saying, I don't know. I just don't see it. I guess if you had to, maybe a receiver, but those positions are just too talented to keep a 3rd quarterback. This next question comes from Ron. He says, so far, the starting 5 offensive line has been Tunsil, Reed, Kilgore, Davis, Mills from left to right. Do you think this 5 will stick for week 1, or do you think 1 or 2 of them will be replaced, and if they get replaced, who takes over which guys? Example, I personally think Reed might... Excuse me, I don't want to burp it on the mic. This question comes from Ron. Reed might get moved to right guard, Dieter starting at left guard. So then you think Jesse Davis won't start at guard? I think Jesse right now is the best guard on the team. And that's saying something. But I would say, if I had to say which one would get replaced, it would be Chris Reed. But I do think that will be the starting lineup for week 1. But I do think Reed probably will get replaced. Ahmed, I think is your name, or Hamid. He asks, get a chance to watch Robert Ndikche's, I think, or Ndikche's, or however you say his name, arrest video. Looks like he's been cut. So should the Dolphins take a flyer on the troubled bust? No. If Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, which I think Todd was still there when they drafted him, cannot do anything with him, then there's no way anybody's going to be able to do anything with him. So no, I don't think the Dolphins should even take a flyer on him or a chance. No, I don't think the Dolphins should. This next question comes from Burn. Yeah, Burn Doe. Says, how many games do you see us winning if Fitzmagic starts the whole season? And Rosen. And then he says, not the whole season because Rosen will play, but let's just say 13 games. How many games do you see us winning if Fitzmagic starts the whole season? If he's that's a tough question. If he's Fitzmagic, or if he's just Ryan Fitzpatrick. If he's Ryan Fitzpatrick, probably will be at the most an 8-18 at the best. At the worst, maybe 7-9, 6-10, or somewhere in there, because he's just inconsistent. And he needs, the great quarterbacks and what you need to be a successful team is they need to elevate their play when they play against good teams. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't really done that throughout his career, where, there's a big game. He hasn't played at that level that we need, he hasn't played at Fitzmagic level. Now, he did do it against the Saints last year, but that was week 1. He did it against the Eagles, but that was before they got their stuff together. They were a bad team at the time. And the Saints got off to a slow start, so I don't count that either. So, that's something that he has to be better at. He's played a long time in the NFL. and he hasn't done it. But I guess the argument against that, he went 10-6 with the Jets when he had a good receiver core and a decent offensive line. He went 10-6. That was the best year he's probably ever had as a starter. And that was the first time he's really been like, all right, you're the starter. Even though in camp he wasn't. It took an injury for that to happen. But he did put that on his resume. So who's to say that if he wins the job, he's the starter for the rest of the season, that he can't produce at the same level that he did in that 10-6 season, winning 10 games. I don't know. I mean, you just haven't seen enough of that throughout his career. But he has the potential to do it. He's a veteran. He put up really good numbers last year. Now, if you look at his touchdown interception ratio, you're like, well, that's not that great, or it's not even that good. But if you look at other metrics and other numbers, it's actually pretty dang good and pretty impressive. So he can do it. It's just his consistency is all over the dang place, and that's why we would be. If he's inconsistent, then we're gonna be an inconsistent team. We're gonna go one win, one loss, one win, one loss, one win, one loss. If he plays that way, if he doesn't, and he gives us a consistent, good quarterback play, then we could be pretty dang good. And if the offensive line can play better, the one thing that I think is, and we'll leave off on this thought. The one thing that I think is interesting that came up in the team stream over the last week, the Dolphins team stream, was someone talking about, and I can't remember the name, but someone talking about how the Patriots' defense really doesn't rely on their defensive ends to get sacks, and that's true. If you look at, even Trey Flowers, he didn't put up double-digit sack numbers on a consistent basis. They really don't. They got rid of Chandler Jones. They didn't feel that they needed him, and that defense still produced. They really don't have a number one pass rusher, but their defense still does very well. At least at the end of last year, it did. Especially in the playoffs, it did very well. So that's an interesting thought to have with this particular defense. The one thing that they do have to have, though, in New England, to have a successful defense, especially because they're so dominant on third down, is to have a good secondary. And that is something that this Dolphins defense coincidentally does have, and it does have a pretty good amount of depth on it as well, with some of the DBs that are on it. So I think this defense is going to be a lot better than people think it's going to be. I think it's going to be pretty dang good. So I'm not worried about the sack and pressure situation. Overthinking it. I'm not worried about it. I am worried about setting the edge in the running game, but other than that, I'm not really worried about the defense. The offense is what worries me. It's just that offensive line that gives me the most pause. Is will they come together? I think that's where the season kind of lies, because we can't. Josh will not have a successful season with guys got to remember, we were the second worst offensive line last year. No one and no pocket passer will have a successful season behind an offensive line like that. You're just not going to. You're just not going to. It doesn't matter who's behind center. So that has to improve. Again, I'll say that again. We were the second to last or second to worst offensive line last year. That has to get better. And if it doesn't, that's the one thing I'm worried about on this team is the offensive line. Everything else I think will be okay. But the offensive line is a problem, and hopefully it's better than we think it will be. It's got the coaching staff to do it, and I have faith that it will get done. They just have to be good. They don't have to be great, and we do have one of the best left tackles in the league, so it's not that far-fetched. It's just the interior has to be better, and this emphasis on being a more physical team, hopefully, that improves that department on the offensive line, because we just got pushed around a lot last year. Anytime we played a physical team, we just got our heads knocked back. The Bills we should not have this much trouble with the Bills, but they are a physical football team, and they've been a run-first team for years now, and that's really what's hurt us is just their physical nature. So that has to get better, and that starts in the trenches. And I think the defensive line will be way more physical than it has been, and it will be way better against the run than it has been. It's just the offensive line that I'm worried about. So that is going to be it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like this content, then hopefully you will go check out the channel and support the channel. in any way that you possibly can. So I'm Skax383, and I cannot wait to see you guys in the next one.